When I hear entrepreneurs talk about their senior leadership team, they say they're not strategic enough, they're not spotting the big opportunities, they're not moving fast enough, they're not thinking big enough. But the directors are going, they're changing the goalposts on a daily basis. They see this shiny thing and they run off, and I don't know why. Their communication is poor. They're meddling. This phenomenal relationship that's fundamentally flawed because of this frustration. You're not doing a bad job because you cried in that meeting or you don't know the answer to that question. That's all normal. This is all normal. We're all human beings trying to sort of find our way. I think it's quite easy to be paralyzed and go, oh, I'm not a born leader, I'm not a born entrepreneur. And I personally think that's nonsense. I think the sacred art is finding what you're good at and being confident in that, and that makes you the leader. I do think, and what comes out is that guilt and that, am I doing good enough?
This word guilt shows up a lot. It hardly shows up with men. How do we shift that narrative?
Well, it's interesting because sometimes you don't need to. Like maybe that guilt makes those female founders more empathetic. It makes them more understanding with their teams. I don't think there's one particularly easy answer to that. But we need to tell everyone it's okay to not be okay. Where men, I think, just sort of stride ahead and go, I'm doing good, come on, keep listening to me. I think females sometimes need a bit of reassurance. Well, what an amazing question at the time that AI is getting so huge.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb.
And I'm Del.
And this is the Sacred Art of Leadership podcast. And we've got a great guest today.
We do, Jane Gomez. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, before we get into that, Del, how's the world looking from your window in Austin, Texas this morning?
Unusually, I can see almost nothing out of my window in Austin, Texas. It's raining like when you drive along the motorway in England and it's raining so much it looks like someone's on your roof emptying a bucket of water over your windscreen.
Sort of horizontal rain.
Yeah, just literally like someone's emptied a bath out of the sky. It's absolutely chucking it down. Yeah.
I am very pleased to say that here in London, the skies are blue.
Yeah.
The day is warm, and it's feeling very like Austin, Texas. What a switcheroo.
I love it. That's your summer been and gone.
Do you know what? That's funny because there's a fair bit of truth in that.
Okay, let's do this. Jane Gomez has spent over 25 years doing something that doesn't get nearly enough credit, making the people around her better at leading. She's a managing director, a connector, a problem solver, has 3 businesses of her own, including working with her husband Chris on the Growth Edge, an elite advisory company that applies the mindset, discipline, and measurement of high performance to help founders rebuild their marketing. She's someone who has sat close to the center of high growth businesses at some of the most pivotal moments of their journey. As MD of the Supper Club, now called Helm, she saw the good, the bad, and the ugly of hundreds of CEOs and their senior teams. What's interesting about Jane isn't just the companies she's been part of, it's the lens she brings to all of it. She's not a CEO. She's not interested in the spotlight. She's someone who has built her leadership from the inside out, chaired thousands of problem-solving discussions, been the steady hand behind entrepreneurial founders, and consistently turned roadblocks into momentum. She's also a voice in the conversation about what it really means to work for and alongside entrepreneurs, which is messier, richer, and more human than most people admit. Welcome to the Sacred Art of Leadership podcast, Jane Gomez.
Hey,
hi, Jane.
Thank you very much for having me. Hi.
We're looking forward to your wisdom.
It's always sort of humbling and quite embarrassing when people read out your bio, isn't it? Oh, shucks.
That's interesting.
How does it feel hearing it read back to you like that?
Well, it makes you feel a bit old, doesn't it? Because you're like, my gosh, been around a bit. But yeah, I guess I don't stop and sort of think about all the things that I've done. And Derek, it's really been lovely hearing the way that, having known you for about 15 years of my career, hearing how you describe what I do. It's just nice having someone else's perspective. So yeah, thank you. It was lovely.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Like, I find the hardest thing is to understand how other people see you, because you can't ever get that perspective, can you? So it's nice to be able to reflect how impactful you've been on my life and my career, like, to you, because it's almost a shock to me that you don't know how helpful you've been, but it's also lovely. I love that humility. So thank you.
But I remember when you and I. So for the context of this, I chaired the forum that Derek was in for about 15 years with 7 other entrepreneurs. We'd meet monthly. And I can remember we did a session, if you'll remember, where we did a 360, and I asked all of you to review everybody in the group in that start, stop, continue. What do they do that's really helpful? What would you like them to stop doing? And what would you like them to continue doing? We all did that on each other. And everybody was shocked by going, oh, you value that from me, or, oh, I didn't realize I gave that. So I think that's quite a human thing to not realize.
So we love to start our podcasts with our signature opener question. So when you heard the title, The Sacred Art of Leadership, what did it say to you?
Oh, it is such a good question. And first of all, your brain goes all over the place trying to find some really clever answer, doesn't it? Sort of, what does that mean? Especially with the word sacred, you're like, oh, it's got to be something really deep and profound. And unfortunately, what I got to, because I've been asked a lot of times, is an entrepreneur or a leader, are they made or are they born? And I've always, having met hundreds and hundreds of different entrepreneurs from all sorts of different backgrounds, running all sorts of different businesses in all sorts of different ways, I've sort of realized that actually there isn't one size fits all. And the sort of the sacred art of leadership suggests that there's an answer. And I think the answer is there isn't a one size fits all. And there are some things that I know we'll explore today around the different types of leadership and some of the problems that people face. But I think it's quite easy to be paralyzed and go, oh, I'm not a born leader. I'm not a born entrepreneur. And I personally think that's nonsense. I think the sacred art is finding what you're good at and being confident in that. And that makes you the leader.
Oh, I love that. I really like that.
Maybe it's the art thing. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah.
I didn't when we talk over each other on a podcast. It's ridiculous. But it's more about the art, I think, than the sacred of it. Right? The art can be a million different types of art. There's not one version of art which is good. And so maybe leadership's in that same way. There's just million different ways of doing it.
And art means different things to different people, or a different piece of art affects people in different ways. Isn't that the key? Obviously, you've got that leader that goes, follow me, guys. This is the way that we're going. But you've got the other type of leader that ensures that everyone's with them and pushing the other people who are better at things than them, pushing them forward and putting them on the podium. So, this comes down to that, that art that Derek was talking about. There's different types of brilliant leadership, and that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the big I am and stand on the podium and say, everybody look at me and listen to me. For me, leadership is about, if you think about kind of the word to lead, you're going somewhere, and the art of getting people there with you is different. One way is sort of dragging them along. Another way is, very confidently heading off in that direction. And the other way is sort of putting your arms around everyone around you and getting there.
Jane, I was going to ask you when you were speaking then, what I was thinking about from a leader's perspective, you've got all these different ways to lead, the follow me, the shout at people, or the kind of corral people with you. How do you know which ones to choose? Is it to do with the people in your team, or is it to do with where you're going, or like, how do you decide?
Or is it
what sort of leader?
Who you are innately? Yeah.
Who you are is surely that. Yeah, I believe that's who you are. And this is why, when having worked with the entrepreneurs that I've worked with, and people say, are they made or born? And you look at these people and you think, someone's got virtually no education. I mean, I had a guy turning over 5 million running his business, and he never learned to read or write at school. And then you've got someone else that is a trained accountant and a lawyer, having come through private education, someone else who's 5th generation business, who's had it handed down, and they're all leading these businesses in a very, very different way with a very different background. So long way of saying that's up to the leader, isn't it? Isn't that up to them to go, I wouldn't comfortably be that sort of brash, I'm right, follow me, we're going this way. I'm much more sort of, hey, what does everyone else think? Cool, let's sort of give that a go together. So I think everybody finds, that's your personality, isn't it? That finds what's natural for you.
I'm really curious. Have you found experiences where people? I love the story that from education doesn't matter. You could be highly qualified or not qualified, and it doesn't really matter. Have you come across people who are kind of almost entrepreneurs who then go like, I now need to be a leader, and then they start like faking it or shifting from who they are to kind of trying to be who they think they should be?
Yeah, 1,000,000%. Because I think if you say to most people, who is an entrepreneur, you're going to pick the Bezos and the Richard Bransons and the, and while those two that I've named are very different characters, you sort of look at the risks that they've taken and the books that they've read and these, really huge things. And you think, I've got to do that. But the truth is not very many people get to be that level of success. And there are millions of brilliant leaders running businesses or working in businesses or working in corporates who are never destined to that and probably don't want to be that big, but you can find your own way. So I think, yes, sometimes it's easy to go, I should do this. And then it feels uncomfortable. And that's when, things break down. And actually you probably cause a lot of issues within your team because you're not doing anything or something authentically.
And have you got any examples?
Yeah, I've probably sort of seen things over the time. I mean, we've certainly sat in a forum group, not Derek's one, where someone was saying, I've got this challenge with my salesperson, or someone in my team, and they're not working out. And someone else said, oh, I have this sort of, I do a fire the bottom 5%, and then you're constantly getting everybody better. You could see everyone going, I can't do that. Oh God, is that what I'm meant to be doing? Am I meant to be that ruthless? And am I meant to be, just sort of getting rid of people? And through discussions, we realized that wasn't the solution for that particular person. But, yes, I think sometimes you can hear some things and go, yeah, that grates. I couldn't do that.
But that's huge, isn't it? The preconceptions that we have of how we're supposed to run a business or lead. But Jane, have you got any thoughts about how, awesome question here. The impact that you've had in your forums, right, is the education that you bring and that everybody else brings to each other to allow us to break through that preconception of what leadership's supposed to look like. But for people who don't have the privilege of being part of a group like that, could you speak to how people can not fall into that trap?
By being part of a group. Honestly, I've been part of Helm for coming up 18 years now. And the value of being in that sort of environment, and you're not going to get it from going to a networking event. It's having about those small support groups or even a one-to-one mentor. Look at sort of the support that Deepak has given you, Derek, over the years of going, stop and let's look at this in a completely different way. You need that. You need other people's perspectives, because otherwise you just work in your own little echo chamber of your own head. And to hear someone else repeat something back differently, you kind of go, oh, that's interesting. So, and I chaired a female founders forum. It's really interesting about that. We were talking about being that leader, and sometimes you're just like, everyone's looking at me as if I know the answer. And I'm making this up as I go along. And look at what happened over COVID. None of us have ever lived through anything like this, let alone been a leader of a team or a business through anything like that. And yet everyone, your whole team was looking at you to go, what do we do now? And you're going, I don't know.
There's no playbook for this.
Yeah. There's no playbook for this one. And it's the same with the business. Every day you're making these decisions, and a leader of a group, you're making these decisions probably for the first time. Having that group, having a sort of a closed mentorship group or a one-to-one where someone else is giving you a different perspective.
Listening to you speak, it's really interesting because there's this piece about humanity, right? I'd love to get your thoughts because you mentioned the female founders, the role that gender plays as leaders, as entrepreneurs that you've experienced, and whether there is any external pressures or assumed pressures that, just love to get your sense of the gender. I'm going to say divide, but I really don't believe that at all.
I know what you mean. Yes, I know what you mean. The gender difference. And I'm with you on that. I often feel quite uncomfortable with this because back to the whole one size does not fit all. You've got some very capable female leaders and you've got some female leaders who are struggling, and the same with males. I do think that things that come up time and time again when I talk with female groups, not just founders. I'm a member of another organization for sort of executive senior women, and it's all about sort of supporting everybody. And what comes out is that guilt, and that, am I doing good enough? I think females sometimes need that reassurance that, you are doing a good job. Where, I mean, massive generalization, but where men, I think, just sort of stride ahead and go, I'm doing good, come on, keep listening to me. I think females sometimes need a bit of reassurance that, get out of your head, stop feeling guilty that you're not doing enough of this and enough of that, and that you don't know the answer to that. It's all fine. You're doing a brilliant job.
It's a big question. But how do we shift that narrative around guilt? Because this is something I hear as well, working with female leaders. This word guilt shows up a lot. It hardly shows up with men. How do we shift that narrative, both as someone with your experience and, being a female leader in your own right?
Well, it's interesting, Deepak, because sometimes you don't need to. Like, maybe that guilt makes those female founders more empathetic. It makes them more understanding with their teams. And it's a sort of a natural that those female founders have. And as long as they have their support to sort of keep them going and go, no, you're doing a good job. They need the environment. They need the ability. We need the ability to do everything. I think my generation was the first generation of females that were brought up, and we were literally told, you can be anything. And it's true. You can be anything you want now as a female. If you're willing to work hard and, and you drive and you go for it, you can be anything, where a lot of those doors were closed to my parents' generation. But the trouble is you can't have everything all at once. You can't be a full-time mother and a full-time run a business. You can't do those things at the same time. Something has to give. If you want to be an astronaut, and that amazing woman that went up on Artemis, she can do that, but something else has to give, and I think that maybe it will take a little bit of time. Maybe our children will feel a little bit less guilt because they see their parents working. And so there isn't that sort of expectation. Whereas I go, my role model of my mother, I mean, she did work, but she was 100% the caregiver. And so when I'm not doing that 100%, I feel guilty. So maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it doesn't need to fully change. Maybe it's not going to.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't need to completely change. So you touch on something really quite interesting, because there is this invitation, isn't there? The invitation is the world is your oyster. You can do what you like. But my God, that comes with consequences. And we have to recognize that there is that give and take.
But coming back to sort of sorry, just very quickly, sort of rounding the circle again, Derek, it might even have been in our forum, and it might have been you that said it, that as we were growing the forum, I was the only female in the room. It was just a room full of male entrepreneurs. And as we needed to add more people to the group, the request was, can we have another female entrepreneur in the room? Because it would just be interesting to see if there is a slightly different perspective like that, a different level of empathy and a different softness that it brings. And group is now pretty much 50-50. And it is really, I think it's a really good dynamic, because actually most male entrepreneurs will have female leaders within their business and vice versa. So I think that mix is really powerful and really important.
Can I ask, you said something earlier that really interested me. You said you quite often found yourself as the only female in the room with all these kind of like, kind of senior men, etc. I'd love to understand like how you've seen that shift in journey as a female leader yourself, from what it used to be over that 18 years to now, and what it feels like to be the only female in the room.
Well, interestingly, I went to there's an organisation called Artemis for female executives, so senior women. It's all about supporting women, and they asked exactly that same question. Have you ever been in this situation? Without doubt, 100% of the women in the room said, yes, I often have found myself being the only female in the room. And it can be incredibly intimidating, because and it can be, you have to sort of remember and go, I've got to be true to myself. Like going back to what we were saying earlier, I can't try and be like a male leader. I have to be the female leader that I am.
I love that.
But you have to sort of, you have to check yourself with that. So it is really, really lovely to see a lot more females becoming parts of these groups to support each other. But interestingly, when I was running the club, when I was MD years ago, we didn't used to do sort of female lunches and things. And somebody said, oh, we should do one. And I said, absolutely not. We don't need that. We don't need to create a separate space for us. We can, we're quite happy sitting in a dining room with, or even if it's all men, and hold our own. We just, I was sort of a bit like, actually the power comes from not needing that. And it was completely wrong. The power comes from creating that space and creating that sort of environment where you go, look, let's just be female founders together and support each other, and then sort of recharge the batteries and go back into into those sort of more male dominated areas.
Can I ask if Derek and I were flies on the wall in that room, like what is that kind of magic source that gets created when you're together?
Well, I tell you what, every single time you come in and everyone's all smiles and hello, or, getting to know each other, and the volume level and the energy in that room builds and builds and builds and builds. And every single time you end up, sort of going, let's go on holiday together. we're just so supportive of each other and each other's champions, and let's go into business. And it's really, really good fun.
And out of interest, sorry, I'm kind of hogging the air a little bit, but I'm really curious. When you're in the men's forum,
no, you can't come to the next one.
But when you're in the men's forum and you do the same thing, and you're an observer, is there a difference? Is it what do you notice?
Yeah, it's not the energy in the same way.
Interesting.
I think it's much more level with the males in terms of that energy. They sort of come in already pretty confident. And there's definitely, with the sort of, if it's predominantly a male group, there is that sort of care, and at the end, I think there's a real appreciation when someone has been vulnerable. There is a real sort of like, God, thank you so much for sharing that, quite personal challenge that you're going through. And I think sometimes that's, there's almost like a relief around that, or a sort of a respect that someone has been that vulnerable. Whereas in the female founder forums, it's almost the other way. Like people come in and go, I don't know about this and I don't know how to do that. They're already sort of very vulnerable, very open. And then at the end, people are going, but what are you talking about? You're brilliant at that. And you said you did that. So you're way better at this than you think you are. So I think it's sort of a little bit of a reverse in a way.
A little part of me doesn't really want to think about this or ask this question, but the sense that women generate, like, it's almost like, it sounds like it's unlocking potential and energy that has somehow been suppressed. But the idea that men as leaders are not creating an environment anyway where women can be that best version of themselves and need to go to a separate place where they can be together to really do that, be that, let that go. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it is true. And I don't think men can hold all the blame for that. But I think men could be aware that women are not necessarily naturally quite as confident as men.
You say the word naturally. Is that coming back to the kind of like where we started almost? Like, is this nature or nurture? Is it naturally because it's the situation, or like if you were
I
to
think that's I think that's a natural thing. You know, I mean, I'm a big believer in that nature nurture thing, and if you go way back. Or you look at sort of different animal kingdoms where, I mean, other than the lions, where the women do the hunting, but, you know, men go out and do the hunting and the women do the nurturing and the homemaking. So, you know, if we go really sort of far back. And so it's kind of natural that that's the case. And this is what I was saying about female founders, where they have that empathy and they have that self-doubt. It makes them just a different type of leader to a male leader who is maybe a bit more brash, a bit more self-confident, a bit more sort of, you know, sod it, let's do it anyway sort of thing. Whereas the women might be, you know, a bit more of a thinker. But if the females then have those environments where they can, you know, be G'd up, be told that, you know, this is good, you're doing a really good job, and then go back out and be confident, then it makes them a much more empathetic, caring leader, I think.
Yeah.
No,
I definitely agree with you that there is. I have this. Derek and I speak about this as well. That I don't think it's male and female. It's masculine and feminine leadership, energetically almost. And it's not about this is a personal view. It's not an equality thing. You know that it's about equality, but it's about that mix of energy, the mix of perspective that we bring that's missing. Because it's either balanced too far one way or forcefully balanced too far the other way. And this sense that you said, people turning up saying, well, right, you know, let me check in. I've got to be myself here, even though I'm here in this room. I've got to, and I think I think that's for me, that's what's missing. But I'd love to get your perspective, having seen the two groups, the male who, you know, given permission to be vulnerable so they can say that, you know, so brave of you to do that, and giving them a sense, and the women to kind of go, look, we're in it together, that sisterhood, we G each other up, etc. What's the perfect mix? What would that look like? Not in terms of roles or titles, how would it feel? What would be going on in that room that would make it an amazing?
I think the ability to check in with each other. So if you are a senior leadership team or a board, is not just coming in and doing your job, but it's checking in on people as well and going, how am I doing? How are you doing? How is this all working? So we've recently introduced a thing called traffic lights that one of the female members of my group suggested. So we have to say, before we talk about anything else, we say red, amber, green for our business and our personal life. So you can go into as much or as little detail as you want, but you cannot have a conversation about how someone can be a strong leader within a business if you don't know that their home life is falling apart. And it has been game changing.
Oh, no.
So I think from a leadership point of view, whether you are a board, you're an SLT, you are a team, having that personal check-in, I think, is vital.
Jane, one of the great things about having you on this show is just the vast diversity of businesses and leaders that you've worked with over the years, rather than having one particular business that you excelled at, right? That experience of all those different people. I'm really curious if there's a correlation between successful, let's say, whatever that looks like, and the opposite, like a negative effect on your home life. Like, you know what we were talking about earlier in terms of you can be anything you want, but you can't be everything you want. Are the leaders that have focused so much of their energy on their business, is it common that it's working less well for them personally?
I think there's lots and lots and lots of people that succeed at both at the same time, but one will take a toll on the other and vice versa. You know, there's somebody that I know and he has 2 young children, and the business is demanding a huge amount of international travel. That's going to have an impact on his partner, who has to do more of the childcare, who also works. She's a solicitor, so that's not easy. Children are young. So what do you do? You know, that's going to have an impact. So it has to be a balance, doesn't it? It has to be a trade-off.
Does it always have to be a trade-off? And should it be?
I can't see how it can't be a trade-off. But it's the same with everything, right? It's the same with if you want to go and play golf, or you want to see your family more often, your parents, or you've only got a finite amount of time and a finite amount of energy. So everything that you do has to be some sort of trade-off.
I agree.
I think.
I agree, and I think it's where that trade-off is a conscious choice. That you're actually consciously recognizing that in doing this, it comes at a cost.
Yeah,
and there is
I
a
think that's
purpose
the
or a
key.
reason behind that.
I think that really is the key, because sometimes you're not conscious, and sometimes things become habit, and then that becomes the way that they are, and relationships can suffer because of that, or and even partnerships within business can suffer because of that, because you're so busy being busy and growing and doing all of this that you're not stopping to look around. You know what it's like. You're only as happy as your unhappiest child, and God, you carry that. When they are not happy, God, you carry that, and that's going to affect your ability and energy to do all those other things. Whereas to be able to talk about that, and then you can move on and talk about the business, it creates that level of empathy that is vital. Because, Del, when you were running your business, it's not devoid of emotion, is it? It's flipping hard work.
Especially in a creative business, it's not devoid of emotion.
It's not devoid. It is really hard. It is really stressful. There is a huge amount. All these eyes are on you, going, right, Derek, tell us what to do next. And if your cup's overflowing because your home life is stressful, that's there's only so much a person can take.
I totally agree.
It makes me think of the fact that we all sit in a circle broadly a circle in the forum meetings. That circle is very much like a sacred circle, right? Back to the origins of leadership and sharing circles, where it's not just about, how do you improve your bottom line by 5%? Like, how do you manage your life to be able to show up in your life as the best version of you, but also in the business as the best version of you, and that sense of community and sharing and vulnerability, what you've created within Helm is exactly what I think the world needs.
I remember being in a group discussion, and somebody had built this incredible tech business, and the PE, his first round PE, wanted to exit. So they were in discussions with other PE, and the numbers they were talking about valuing this business was phenomenal. Hundreds of millions. So really huge success, this entrepreneur. And he said, I've got these two phenomenal offers. One is X amount and one is Y amount. This amount, Y amount is a lot bigger, and they want me to be CEO of the whole group. So take on these sort of 4 other businesses, and everyone's like, oh my God, this huge number. Obviously you're going to go for the bigger number. And somebody said, but do you want to be the CEO of this big group? And this guy, it almost sort of went a bit pale, and he was like, no, that's not what I want. And it's not about the money. It's, actually I'd much rather take the lower amount and have more impact on my business. And he went with the lower amount, because having that round table, being able to all sit around a table and just go, what about you though? It was really powerful. I'll never forget that moment. It was like, wow.
I've got a question for you based on the sort of Helm forum type thing. I've noticed a lot of people over the years bring up an issue, hear lots of really good solutions to that issue, personal or business, and then completely ignore them. Have you noticed that? And
I have, yeah.
Why is that?
Well, because I think I was thinking about leadership a lot, sort of knowing I was coming on this. And one of the things about being a leader is you have to make this decision and you have to lead with it. And actually, if you're faced with X and Y again, the Y option is still a valid option. There's not always a right and a wrong. Sometimes there is, obviously. But, sometimes there's UVW, X, Y, and Z as the options. And you have to make that decision and feel comfortable with it. And so the 2 ways of answering that, Derek, is that sometimes when people go, okay, I've heard your U, V, W, X and Y, but I'm going to go with Z, but I'm going to go with it much more confidently, and having heard the other sides of the story and other people's opinions. Really, really interesting. It's helped me with my conviction that this is the way that I'm going to go. And I think sometimes when leadership fails is when they haven't considered lots of those other options, and they haven't brought the team on board as well. So you've just gone, everybody, we're going to go and do this. And people need to know why. They need to know kind of what's the thinking behind it. What's the story? Bring me on that journey. And a lot of the time, entrepreneurs don't have enough time to explain that. And so things either fail or they don't go as well as they intended because they haven't brought everybody along with them. So I chair a directors forum and a founders forum. And in terms of, they're both leaders, but different, so the director is reporting into that entrepreneur. And when I hear entrepreneurs talk about their senior leadership team and the challenges that they've got, they say they're not strategic enough. They're not spotting the big opportunities. They're not moving fast enough. They're not thinking big enough. They're not thinking entrepreneurially like me. But the directors are going, they're changing the goalposts on a daily basis. They see this shiny thing and they run off, and I don't know why. Their communication is poor. They're meddling. They're not following processes. And so I see this, phenomenal relationship, this really powerful relationship between an entrepreneur and their MD, let's say. And it's built on mutual respect, and there's lots of joint passion and all that kind of stuff. But it's fundamentally flawed because of this frustration. And
how do we bridge that?
Well, I personally think, so when I'm in the directors forum, my question is, what are you going to do about it? You need to manage upwards to this entrepreneur, and you need to manage that. But really, if the entrepreneur is going to say, in order to scale, I need to bring in an MD, they need to be willing to change the way that they operate. Because back to what you were saying, Derek, what happens over time is the MD just goes, look, I'm not actually influencing any change because it will all default to you anyway. And it becomes exhausting and it becomes defunct. So the entrepreneur needs to say, okay, you need to help me here because it's not going to be easy. But if you're going to come in and I'm going to trust you to run these things, you need to help me. And I need to be willing to step away, to relinquish some of that control, to accept that it will be done differently, maybe a bit slower than they would have done it. But without that sort of communication and without that willingness to sort of change and work together, it's just a constant butting of heads. And it's very frustrating.
It's frustrating. I mean, I've been there. But the thread that I'm hearing throughout all of this, which I'm finding fascinating, is just be more human. Just see each other, male, female, entrepreneur, director, senior leadership team, be more human. With all your experience and what a privilege, right? To kind of sit and experience and view these. Can't wait till you write the book. But how do in your experience, how do you bring that kind of, how do we start introducing this sense of just be more human, like that humanity into these roles of leadership?
Well, what an amazing question at the time that AI is getting so huge. And actually what I'm seeing and hearing a lot of entrepreneurs doing is saying, obviously we need to bring AI in to do a lot of the processes, but actually we need to really double down on that human side. I don't think there's one sort of particularly easy answer to that, but we need to tell everyone it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not know what you're doing. And, and
it's okay to be who you are.
It's okay to be who you are. Exactly. Yeah. You're not doing a bad job because you cried in that meeting, or you don't know the answer to that question, or, you've lost your mojo a little bit. You've lost your way. That's all normal. This is all normal. We're all human beings trying to sort of find our way. And literally, Derek, I'm sure you'll contest to this, make it up as we go along, and that makes you a great leader because you're making it up and you're doing it anyway.
And admitting it.
It work. Yeah.
I think helps.
But you were the most amazing human, you know, in inverted commas, because you would sit there, Derek, and say, you know, I couldn't be an NED. I don't necessarily know, or I'll do a podcast because I don't know what I want. I don't know what I've got to say. And we were like, what? You're the most incredible entrepreneur and leader. And, you know, we were all waiting for you to speak in the group. And you were fantastic at coming in and going, I don't know what I don't know. And I don't, you know, there's lots of things I don't know. You know, and it doesn't matter what level of success you got. There's things you don't know. And you were amazing at that.
Thank you. That's therapy in practice. So Dip's been working on me to say thank you when I get a compliment. So thank you. And and also, Jane, that makes me come back to the question for you. Like people like you and me, right? Probably, so I can only speak for myself. It shocked me that I ended up being a leader and still don't really know if I did a very good job of it. But I do think that people like you and me should be leaders, right? People who have a little bit of guilt and self-doubt and humility and vulnerability, like just good humans, right? I think should make good leaders, often do make good leaders, but also often either don't let themselves get into that position, or something happens where the good guys don't really break through into that leadership position. And I noticed for you, you've got so much leadership. You've got so much leadership experience from other people, from your own businesses, and yet I feel like you still have that humility. I don't know if it holds you back, but there's something about being kind and empathetic and generous and smart that keeps people from being the big I am in a leadership role. How do you feel about that?
Thank you for the compliment.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm not very good at believing in myself. I have to say that is something I could work on. But I did an exercise with a fabulous man called Craig Goldblatt a number of years ago, where I was sort of love Craig. I was sort of falling apart, I think, you know, in all honesty, and I've spent many a phone call in tears to Craig, bless him. And he said, "What are your personal values?" You know, companies always have their own values, don't they? And he was like, "What are your personal values?" And I was like, "God, I've never thought about that." And I came up with 3 for me. One is drive. So I want to always be testing myself and doing something, you know, and moving forward. One is fun. So important to me that I'm around great people, my friends, my family. I've got a lot of time for that. And then my third one is nurture. And I realized that my core, everything in me is I want to help people. And I get so much more joy and validation from some of my volunteering work and the sort of charity things, and when it's free or when it's just helping someone with no agenda, that actually fills me way more. So I think not being able to blow my own trumpet and then just genuinely wanting to help other people probably doesn't push me to the fore. And then also I'm surrounded by people like you, Derek, and other brilliant entrepreneurs that make me just go, oh, damn it, I'll never be as good as that.
Well, how about you? I just think leadership is all about helping other people and making the best, you know, in creating an environment where they can flourish. And that's exactly, and that gives me joy, and it gives you joy. And how do we help people like us actually realize that leadership is an option for them? You can do even more of it if you're in control of something.
Can I throw a question to both of you? Does this word leadership get in the way? Like if we remove the word leadership, entrepreneur, founder, CEO, director, took all those away, would that make a difference? Is it that gets in the way?
Yeah, but I also sort of think that I am and you are, hopefully, where you're meant to be and where you want to be. I'm really happy with, you know, all the different things that I do. And some places I'm a number 2 to an entrepreneur, other places I'm the lead. You know, you could be the leader sort of supporting everybody else. You know, you could be the leader of getting everyone to go out for the drink, and everyone sees you as like, oh, you know, where are we going this weekend, or where are we going after work? Or so, you know, leader doesn't necessarily mean the number 1 person, or, you know, it's just being sort of driving something that you're passionate about and that you enjoy doing. And chairing the forums, I absolutely love. I get such a buzz from getting at the end and knowing that everyone's had challenges and they will go back into their business and do something different and better, and love that.
I love how this all, when you listen, there is a simplicity through this complexity, isn't there? That everything you listen to is this kind of like, if you can just be comfortable with who you are, where you are. I love what you said, that you're exactly where you're meant to be. But that's such a simple statement, but it takes a lot to say it, and it's taken a lot to get to a position where you can say it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for everyone to remember. So we like to close with some quick fire questions. Short, very honest, human answers. There's no pressure to be profound. There's not designed to kind of like anything like that. It's just whatever comes to you. Just let us know. So, what's a belief about leadership you used to hold that you've completely abandoned?
Well, I think that you do have to be a certain type of person. Just be human, like you said. Be human. Believe in yourself. Give it a go. Bring people with you. Be human.
Be yourself.
Be yourself. That was profound.
I like it. You can be profound. There's no expectation, but you most definitely can, and you did that wonderfully. You've worked alongside some seriously driven people. What's one quality that you've watched from the sidelines and thought, I want more of that, or I'll never be that?
One thing that I see that all certainly entrepreneurs have is ability to meet a roadblock and go, cool, this is an opportunity to find an exciting answer to it, instead of going, that's going to stop me. That's what all entrepreneurs do. Is a roadblock is not a stop. It's a opportunity to go around it.
Yeah, definitely. That's one. I can see Derek nodding to that as well. If the entrepreneurs you've worked with knew one thing about how people around them experience their leadership, what would you want them to know?
That you meddle.
That you meddle.
Yeah. Get out the way. So I think the biggest problem in a scaling business, the founder has done everything from day one, and they think about that business 24/7 in the shower, on the cycle to work. But that's not going to work once you bring a team on board. So the brilliant entrepreneurs that I've heard are the ones that learn to trust their teams, accept that they will do things differently, and allow other people to take on responsibilities and lead. And when it doesn't work is when they become involved again.
Back to meddling.
Closely. Back to meddling, yeah.
Love it. You spent years in rooms built on confidentiality. What's the thing that leaders say in private that they most need to say in public?
I don't know the answer. I think in public, in private, it's really great when they say, I don't know. I remember one guy he'd sold a portion of his business for $500 million. I mean, we're talking serious. This is a different story to the other guy. And he turned up to a dinner discussion around motivating senior leadership team. And everyone was like, sorry, what are you doing here? Like, surely you know everything about everything. And he was like, no, I haven't got a clue. I get it wrong all the time. And it was just so incredible. It was just so wonderful to see this guy who could have, had a very big head and just gone around preaching to everybody else. But he was there going, yeah, there's loads of stuff I don't know. So I think certainly if they could say one thing more, it would be, I don't know what I'm doing, and be groups where it supports you.
Love it. I mean, I've honestly, this is your depth and breadth of experience and all the kind of places you've been in. It's been fascinating listening to you. I'm going to let Derek ask our closing question that we like to do.
The new traditional closing question that we've never done before.
The new
but we're
traditional
starting
closing question that we always ask.
Always, every time.
We always ask this one. Over to you, Doug.
What's the one thing that you've never told anybody that's made you the person or the leader that you are today?
My goodness, I don't know. I tell everybody everything. I'm terrible. But yeah, I think my outward persona is not what's going on in my head. That I am quite an insecure. Insecure is the wrong word. I have a huge amount of self-doubt, but I think I have a sort of quite a loud voice and quite a big personality that I think it belies what's going on inside. And I think that probably sort of has helped me a lot. You know, that's probably made me the leader, is that I do, I come across as really confident and everything. And so people often believe that I'm confident, and therefore things have worked, things have happened. But yeah, inside my head is not always my biggest champion.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I know that there'll be a lot of listeners that it resonates with me, and I think it resonates with a lot of people, right? You kind of sit there and go, yeah. So thank you for that. Wow, what a conversation.
Yeah, it's
Really
been
good.
brilliant.
Thank you so much.
Lovely to chat with you guys.
This has been The Sacred Art of Leadership. I've been Del.
I've been Dip.
See you next time.